He's one of the hardest working men, if not the hardest working person in the business.
Thank you.
There's no rock, that he'll leave left unturned in trying to, accomplish the goal for his clients. He's family now with us, super knowledgeable. So Bert, I'm grateful for you to be here right now.
It's my pleasure, Rich. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and the fact that we can speak about this, at greater length, and maybe even share, some information and resources, for the future home buying public. I think that this is absolutely worthwhile, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Absolutely. And so, while we're here, I guess my mindset on this is, what would I have said if I could go back in time? That's, we always all have that question. What if I could go back in time? If I was talking to the 25 or 26-year-old rich dancer right now, and I want to name the three things that came to my mind like that I feel would be great to cover today, which one was not being able to afford the payments. Another thought that I used to have was the first home I had to be the one, had to be the dream home. And then just thinking that you have to have a massive amount of wealth just to get started. Starting with just the mindset that a 25 or 26-year-old on an entry-level job can't afford, a house. What would be something that you'd say?
Well, that's a great question. And, I want to start by saying I have a young fella that I'm working with right now. He delivers pizzas. That's it. But he's very, very young. He must be, I've never asked him his age, but he must be 21, 22 years old. And he wants to buy a house, and he also wants to kind of share the expenses with his brother. And I can't think of a more solid beginning to his adulthood, than to want to be a homeowner. And I completely support that. He qualifies, and and he came to me already qualified with, for a loan, and he was referred to me by another client. That I guess is his manager. my client is a manager at a Papa John's, and he's one of the drivers, and God bless him. That's wonderful. But to come from that point of view, I thought I'd give a real life example and say, it is quite possible, and fortunately, some people have overcome that obstacle or that barrier that a lot of us have in our minds when we're young. That somehow it's homeownership is for old people or something like that, and frankly, the sooner somebody can get involved, with the process, at least to begin the process and to learn what is going to be required down the line, in terms of credit score, in terms of savings for down payment and closing costs, and things of that nature. I think that the sooner they can do that, the better off it's going to be for them.
Well, for the most part, you don't think one day I'm going to go get a home and then you go out that same day and just end up with the home. It's, it can take months. It can possibly take years. Like, it's not about feeling, waiting until you have everything together. If you get the process started, you can always fill in the blanks. You can always, find out what your starting point is and see what your end goal is. And you're right there along the way to help everyone get through to that. The next question I have, would be along the lines of, does it have to be your dream home, or would you, suggest someone just getting into something and then being able to build up equity, maybe in a year and a half or 3, 4, 5 years, however much, time you stay there, because it's probably not going to be the same home you stay in for the rest of your life anyway. How much more valuable, in your opinion, is it to get into whatever home you qualify for and build that up versus spending money on rent, renting at an apartment or something in your early or mid 20s?
So let me back up by saying something that I learned from my father at a very young age. So let me start answering that question by saying that my dad, when I was born, we lived in a mobile home. And myself and my brother, 5.5 years later, we were still living in the mobile home. And while it was great for us, it was even better for us whenever he decided to sell the mobile home and use the equity that he had built up even in the mobile home to purchase our first home. And that was over here at Interstate 10 in Wurzbach here in San Antonio in the 1970s. I still remember that. Yeah, but that you kind of start thinking about that, and that was smart. So it kind of goes back to what we're talking about here, which is okay. Well, is it not that it's acceptable? It's just is it desirable? Is it absolutely, because you need a starting point somewhere, and the homes. Anywhere you go in America, just about, you'll find that historically homes appreciate in value. I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not going to pretend to know what a house is going to be worth next year, or even next month, or certainly not 5 years down the road. And it's literally against the law. So full disclosure, I hold a Texas real estate broker's license. So I have a little bit more education than the run-of-the-mill agent, which is fine. I've practiced real estate, over 6 years now, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted to be a little bit more credible with my clients. I wanted to have other avenues, other ways to go with my real estate career. But one thing I can tell you that through my broker training is that we do talk about the fact that you cannot, under any circumstances, project or promise the prospective buyer that there will be that the home will be valued at a certain amount. Gotcha. Or even try to take an educated stab at what that's going to be in the future. You cannot do that. It's absolutely a lack of integrity. It's perhaps even illegal. So we can't do that. So, right. But one thing we can say is we can always use one of our favorite tools in the whole world, mine and yours, which is Google. Mm-hmm. Just Google, the historical real estate trends, and we do that sometimes, even with interest rates. Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we cannot look at how much somebody owes on a property. However, if we kind of get a sense for when they bought the property, you can kind of guess based on historical interest rate data what their interest rate might have been around that time. I mean, we do obviously an amortization schedule to kind of take a stab at that, or better yet, we can just ask them for that data, sure. Right? If we're going to sell their house, we're going to list their house for them as a listing professional. But whenever I'm speculating, that's what I do, because all that information is available to us as historical data. So what I'm talking about is the appreciation of real estate. Year over year over year, historically, it appreciates. In San Antonio, depending upon the neighborhood, as I'm not going to tell you it's across the board, but generally speaking, in San Antonio, for example, we're looking at between 2% to 5% year over year appreciation. And that compounds, okay? Because if it's $100,000 today, and it's using that math or that rule, if you will, then it's $102,000 the next year. But then it's 2% more of 102,000. So obviously that's just kind of snowballing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful thing, because the sooner you can begin to build that equity, the better off you're going to be. So let me back up a second and let me talk about price points. This gentleman I was telling you about, we'll call him Steve. Mm-hmm. It's not his real name, but let's call him Steve, the delivery driver. He wants to buy a home. Okay, who am I to judge him on his price point or what he can afford to pay or whatever? So let me be frank and say that not all realtors operate the way I do, and they might not all find that there's enough in it for them, so to speak. Yeah. And I don't want to speak out against my profession. Let me just say that not all realtors are equal, are built equally, or approach situations equally. My belief is that I try to be a gift to all those who enter my life. So by using that abundance mentality and optimism and positivity, I believe that perhaps there's a reason why our paths have crossed. They came to me for a reason, so now it's incumbent upon me to try to work with that client at whatever his or her price point is. So if it's $150,000 house, it's going to perhaps take a little bit longer for us to find that home, but guess what? We're going to find it. Even if it's a diamond in the rough, whatever even if it needs a little bit of work, whatever that is. Because remember that there are certain loan programs available that enable you to also borrow a portion of the rehab costs. And we talked about that
it was
during
the
our
FHA 203K.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a memory. That's terrific. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then the conventional version is Fannie Mae home style. And both of those loans enable you to borrow, and there's a cap, maybe 40,000. I'm not licensed in lending, so I'd have to research that. But I think it's 40K on a 203K loan FHA. And so if you can borrow those rehab dollars and combine them with the purchase price of the home and roll that into one monthly payment without having to take out another loan or a consumer loan, whatever, then that's a pretty powerful thing, because you also get to lock in at a really low interest rate, depending on credit and other factors. But not everybody gets the same low interest rate, but interest rates right now, I think we'd agree, are at all-time lows, at least in my lifetime. I lived through a time when the interest rates were, 14%, 17%. And, so that in the 80s, and once upon a time that was the case. So if you're finding anything sub 5, even sub 4, I think that we can agree that that's a very, very favorable interest rate. Money is cheap. So, so I'm an advocate of, hey, let's do what we got to do to get you into a house. If it takes a little bit of rehab, we just have to find the right lender that knows how to maneuver the ins and outs of that loan, of that rehab loan. And let's see if we can update the kitchen, if we can maybe update some of the bathrooms, whatever the cosmetic things are. So now that $150,000 house borrowed $30,000, now you're into it for $180 minus whatever you had to put down, and now you're forcing appreciation though. You're going to build equity for a different reason. Now your home's going to be worth more because you've just now renovated it, right? And now it's aesthetically more marketable in the future whenever you go to sell it, like we said, 3, 4, even 7 years down the road, whatever that person's objectives are.
Well, when I came here for college back in 2003, some of the neighborhoods now where you see people walking dogs, just having, really nice neighborhoods now were neighborhoods back then where I was told, oh, don't associate with that neighborhood, things like that. So if it'd been an opportunity, to purchase property there at that, that rate, or live in the neighborhood then, buy a house then, who knows what it could have sold for, flash forward with, the property value increasing. So, but all of that would have been knowledge I would have had to gain from, meeting someone like you, and which I think that's another possible issue for millennials. So I think we just have a distrust of the establishment in general. And then when it comes to home ownership, how do you find a realtor that you can trust? And also along the lines that you said, that you don't feel like they're going to judge you for your starting point. I think sometimes people, from some of the people I've spoken with, and just kind of what went through my head back then, just not feeling you're in a point to get started. So what would you say to someone who feels like they can't, they're too ashamed, I guess, to go to someone and say, hey, look, my credit score is here. This is how much money I've got to get started.
So I would start by saying, we have to, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's Keller Williams is the company that I'm associated with, and our signature training program is called BOLD. It's Business Objective of Life by Design, right? And you go through a 7-week training, and we have a series of what they call bold laws, right? The things ideas and concepts we must live by, and begin to engrave into our minds as fact that the universe wants us to attract positive things. And the way we begin by doing that is to insert positive things in our mind. We have to come from contribution. We have to think optimistically, positively, and most importantly, faithfully, and to be grateful. You and I, before we started recording, we were talking about gratitude, and I love to hear that from someone in their 30s that has already learned that, by gratitude, so much abundance can come to us. So in saying that, let me just say that it's important for us to live with that kind of mindset, and we have to say, you know what, we need to find the professional that is willing to guide us along the way. We have to start from somewhere, and the first one is to align yourself with a realtor and or a lender, and they have to guide you through the process, because even if that day is not today, even if that day is in 6 months, if that time is in 12 months, if it's 5 years, right, like in our case, it is what it is, you know, because not everybody is prepared financially, credit-wise, whatever those prerequisites are. How are we ever going to know unless we ask? Right. We will never receive anything in this life unless we have the courage to ask for it. My kids make fun of me, and they say that my daddy, you know, earns a living by asking for things. He asks for things for, I mean, and I guess in a sense I do on behalf of my clients. I'm not too ashamed to ask for anything, because we'll never know we can get right. something unless we ask for it. Look at the things that we had achieved, you know, in the purchase of your home. Right. We had some really special things we were able to negotiate there, and everything, absolutely everything, let me agree, say a third time, is negotiable in real estate. So even if the lender says, well, you know what, Mr. Borrower, you're not quite ready yet. What they can do, however, is they can give you a map, if you will, and those steps based on your current credit score, your current DTI, your debt to income ratio, and they go by a certain set of ratios that they're looking for certain types of loans. How much do you have coming in terms of income each month? Child support, you know, whatever that income is, and how much do you have going out, and the relation of the two is called your DTI, and they'll start to evaluate that. Now they might tell you, okay, not today, but how about tomorrow? In other words, how about 6 months, a year, whatever that is. One must have the courage to at least explore that possibility, and one must have it in their minds that, again, an abundance mindset to say, you know what, my day will come. Right. When will that time be? We'll see. And
you know, what the answer is no to 100% of the questions that you don't ask. So I mean, at least if they go get the process started, they're not going to leave empty-handed per se, because at least with the people that you connected us to, they gave us an actual game plan. You know, yes. So we went and we actually knew, you know, aside from them just telling us not today and this is where you are, they actually gave us a game plan of this yes. is what you can do to get to where you want to be. Check back with us. You know, we're gonna actually, a couple of them were said they were gonna follow back up with us, but they were really and played a very important part in us getting to the point we needed to be, because they would check back with us, like yes. on their own accord.
Yes.
You know, so
we as professionals have to be willing to follow up. It's all in the follow up. If you in communication, if you truly want to do business with a family, you can't always rely upon, you know, them to come back to you. So it's all in the follow up, you know, of that particular professional, whether it's, you know, the realtor or the lender, whoever that is. But you're right. I mean, it's a game plan basically. They're going to map out the steps you must take in order for you to be successful someday in obtaining a loan. And if it's credit wise, if it's, hey, I see that you have this truck payment of, you know, $500 a month. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Pay this one down first and pay this off, and then maybe this little credit card with this little, you know, $1,200 balance, pay this off. And they'll tell you, because they have these expertise. Again, going back to what I was saying, it's someone who's an expert in their field. They're going to be able to tell you what that roadmap is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely worth it. You know, if you're watching this, if you're hearing this, you're not alone. There are tools and resources available there. If you were questioning whether or not you should get started, I would urge you to at least follow up with him, and we'll make sure that contact information is available. But it's just so worth it. It's so important for you to, you know, try and go down the path toward home ownership. And I'd like to take some time right now just to kind of, if you would speak to some of the benefits and some of the reasons for becoming a homeowner, just how much of a game changer it could be for someone's life.
Sure. Well, let me start by saying, talking about the items I will not hit on too much, because again, I believe in staying in my lane. So people often read about tax advantages and things that I would consult a CPA or somebody who's qualified. There might be tax advantages, such as mortgage interest deduction and or property taxes, certain closing costs, things of that nature. However, because they've changed the standard deduction, can you take that deduction because you're not, unless you're itemizing, like somebody like myself who's self-employed. If you're itemizing, perhaps you can, and if you're a W-2 employee, then perhaps you cannot. I don't know. So let me just, but there might be some tax advantage. Let me just say that. So we'll start there. The other is equity buildup, and I think that that's one of the most key points, and we talked a little bit about that. But I guess the definition of that, simply put, is how much do you owe relative to how much your home can sell for. So the beauty of it, and for those of you that are not watching this, you're just listening to this, I'm holding my hands in such a manner that it looks like they're parallel to one another. As you are paying down your mortgage with your payment each month, it's going to go down. So my left hand is going down a little bit. In the meantime, all the while, that appreciation is taking place, which is what we talked about, about the homes appreciating in certain neighborhoods at, 2, perhaps even 5% in certain San Antonio neighborhoods, for example. And so now the divide or the delta between what is owed, which you're paying down, and what is the home is worth, and what it's going, and this is going up, that divide continues to grow. And whatever's in between my two hands right here is your equity. Okay? And those you can expect to see as net proceeds whenever you do sell the house. Whenever that day comes. Every family, every person has their own objective. One of the things I do as a listing professional is I present my clients with two key things. One of them is a CMA, it's a comparative market analysis, and the other is a net sheet, a seller net sheet. And I did that, for example, last night in my listing appointment. I have a client that, interestingly enough, or coincidentally enough, how you want to say it, in my neighborhood. And we were going over some of the numbers, because I think I explained to you that it's a little bit of a hot neighborhood, as it turns out. About the appreciation, again, this is not typical results. However, I went over some data with her about one home in particular that was undergoing a few price adjustments, price drops, if you will. And the subject property, that one of the comparables we're looking at, is currently on the market in my neighborhood, and they bought it for $135,000 in 2014. 4 years later, 2018. That home sold for $220,000, I think it was. It was like a $95,000.
Yeah, that's almost.
And
that's
again,
almost
the results are not typical. But let me just say, in certain neighborhoods, and depending upon what you put into the property, like we talked about, in terms of aesthetics, you can force appreciation, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Look at your home. You just bought it, and you're doing certain things to it, slowly, and that will also continue to contribute to that appreciation of the property, and what a ready, willing, and able buyer will be willing to pay for that home in the future. And you're ready to buy, you're willing to go under contract, and you're able to buy, which is evidenced, again, by the pre-qualification by the lender that we talked about.
Yeah. And I mean, just even putting it practically, like in what we were thinking in our minds, like I know you said you can't guarantee the results of appreciation, but just look at the fact that if I at 26 years of age, whenever I had the first opportunity, had just gotten something, whatever home, I could afford or qualify for at the time, and those $600-700 monthly payments I've been putting into rent, that's like the biggest chunk of your money is going towards where you live, whether you're renting or owning a home. And you know how much better we feel now that we know the largest amount of money that we're paying each month is actually going back to us. That's, that's, you touched on that. You're like paying yourself now, pretty much. So that in and of itself, to me, is a major benefit. We're gonna have to have another episode where we can spend more time on just focusing on that aspect alone, just different benefits for homeownership. But I would like to ask now, what would be a good starting point, or what would you say would be their first step? Someone who never, maybe they're hearing this, and for whatever reason, their mind has turned a little bit on homeownership, and they're thinking it's something that I might look into. What would you recommend to be their first step?
So I believe that knowledge, can be powerful. I believe that it takes a certain amount of due diligence, research. So I would begin either reading books, certainly, coupled with reading articles from credible sources that you can find in Google searches again. And one of the other things to do is to align yourself with a good professional. Again, someone that can provide that good sound judgment and guidance, that's patient and is willing to walk you through the steps. And again, I believe that once you can get that initial credit pool, it's important because that way they can kind of gauge where you are and they can give you that path moving forward. But the other thing that we talked about is that we need to also have that discussion, open that dialogue, and that way we can determine what it is that it needs to be done in order to be successful for that loan in the future.
So it's personal, kind of a personalized, yeah.
Yes, and self-development. I mean, that's part of becoming, going to adulthood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And becoming more responsible. It's also not only responsible, like as in like showing up for work on time, and doing the best you can at your work type
Right.
of responsibility. It's also the fiscal responsibility to say, you know what, I'm not going to be hyperspend. I'm going to save. I'm going to be judicious about how I spend my money, where I spend it, and so forth, because here's the end result. Here is what I can do with those savings. If I just, no offense against, any particular one coffee place that I shall name unnamed, but
Right. Yeah.
but at $5 a day,
Yeah.
for a cup of
Every little
coffee,
bit
or,
helps.
the cappuccino, whatever. I mean, just maybe only go 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not asking you to not asking you to do anything, but I mean, I'm suggesting that you just cut back on that and maybe buy a nice name brand coffee for your Keurig maker or something like that, and just by doing that, think about that. So if you're spending $5 a day times 7 days is $35 a week. If I'm suggesting that you only go 3 days a week, then you're saving basically $20 a week, right? Because it's 5 times 4, right? So $20 and compounded over time, and then within a month, those $20 turn into $80, right? And then how many months? That, I mean, that's $960. Is that my math correct? I mean, I think it's close to $1,000.
Yeah, sounds about right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that to me is pretty powerful, to save,
Yeah.
that kind of money.
And
Now,
you're getting close to down payment status when you start getting,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't even touched on the fact that there are certain down payment assistance programs that are available, to folks who qualify. And that's another aspect of how someone can attain this goal. It's attainable, I think, before we wrap up, more anything else, I want to just kind of send out a message of hope to people. And I want to, from my perspective, tell you that it is attainable. It is possible. It is something, that you can strive for. I have a slogan that I coined, and it's written on the back of my car that I've trademarked. It's passionately helping families achieve the American dream one home at a time. Why do I say that? Because I still believe that homeownership is the cornerstone of the American dream. I really do believe so, and I think that it's a very powerful thing for all the reasons that we've discussed.
Yeah. Well, Bert, I appreciate you. This isn't just something that you talk. This is something that you walk out. You've got tons of resources actually already available, either through your emails, also videos on your website. How can people access those resources, or just in general, how could people reach out to you if they want to follow this conversation up and continue it with you in person?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So thank you for enabling me to be here again to participate and for sharing my contact information just to open a dialogue more than anything else. See how I can perhaps provide some guidance and resources, which are free of charge, by the way, because when we purchase a home off of the multiple listing service, or as we call the MLS, the sellers have already negotiated that real estate brokerage fee for the buyer's agent up front. So basically, when we come down to it, my services are free of charge.
Yeah, let me just reiterate that, because that's very important. Like, that's not even I didn't even think to put that on the list.
It's okay.
But it doesn't cost anything to walk, up to your realtor. If you choose to choose for it to be Bert, it doesn't cost anything to go get started with Bert. Like, we never paid Bert a dime. And he got us through from beginning, the starting of the process all the way through to completion. So it doesn't cost anything to get started.
Absolutely not. And again, the lenders will end up charging a small fee for their services once the loan closes. And those will be in your closing costs, of course. Like we talked about, there's some down payment and closing costs and so forth. Mm-hmm. But one thing I must mention before we finish is that not only are there down payment assistance programs, but the lenders, even in this lending climate, can go down to as far down on FHA loan and VA to 580.
Oh, wow.
580. Now, you won't get as reasonable or as competitive as an interest rate because the credit score is not as stellar. However, I mean, you can get into the home at least.
Yeah.
And I think it beats the heck out of renting.
A 580 credit score.
580. And
Yeah.
my lender partners, my main one is Pat Fitzgerald with Academy Mortgage. He's excellent. And he'll go down to 620. But Jeff Cruz at AmeriFirst Financial will go down to 580. I'm also affiliated with him. Yeah. He's also a lender partner of mine. And both gentlemen are trusted people. But going back to your original question, my contact information, the best way to reach me is just to go on my website, which is Bert Sells San Antonio Real Estate.com. It's Bert with an E, BERT, sells San Antonio Real Estate.com. And if you scroll to the very bottom of the page, you'll see my phone number there, which is 210-376-9286.
Awesome. So, well, Bert, we appreciate your time. For everyone listening or watching, know that there's really no reason, no excuse for you not to just get started, because it's there, it's available for you if you're willing. So, Bert, until the next time, I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Rich. God bless.